Gonna go live now. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with the webinar. Just so everyone knows, this is being recorded. So what we will be doing is we will be sending out a recording of the webinar to everyone that participated and also everyone that signed up but wasn't able to make it today. So we're gonna get started here. So a couple things about today's webinar. We are recording it and it's being recorded now. We're going to go through some welcome and introductions. We're going to talk about why laser tattoo removal is being used by nonprofits and those in the justice system. We're going to talk about essential ingredients for what you need to successfully fund and operate a program like that. Talk a little bit about clinic setup, practitioners and regulations, and some of the details and nitty-gritty on what everyone needs to know before they get started. Talk a little bit about laser selection and maintenance, what goes into that. The funding part, we're going to talk with, we have an expert that's a grant writer, so she'll be able to give us some insight on that. Harriet, thank you. And we've got a bonus, so number 8 here. Make sure to stick around for the bonus section. I think everyone who's interested in this type of nonprofit and what we're trying to do here will be interested in that. And then we'll have a few next steps. You know, what can you do to move forward with your concept of having a nonprofit related to tattoo removal? And we'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So we hope to be done in about 45 minutes. So it should be a good period here. And I still left that graphic in there. I thought that would be funny. So a little bit about Astanza Laser. So we are the leader in laser tattoo removal. We also do hair removal, other aesthetic procedures. Our main product is the Duality, which a lot of nonprofit tattoo removal clinics use because it's really a powerful system and it also doesn't break very often. We work with the largest nonprofit tattoo removal provider in the United States, which is Homeboy Industries. They do thousands upon thousands of tattoo removals every year. And they've partnered with us for several years using Astanza systems. I'm Brian. Hi, that's me. That's not my Bitmoji for a change. The VP of Marketing here at Astanza. We've got a great group of panelists here today. Loretta Kent is going to be talking with you in a few minutes. She's from Southwest Tattoo Removal. She's the owner and clinic operator. Jo Martin, as I mentioned earlier, she is actually doing prison ministry right now, so doing important work, and she's going to be getting on in a moment or two from Tattoo Removal Inc. We have our senior grants coordinator, Harriet and Brody, and we also have Amber and Gabler, both from the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, TJJD. So they'll be talking to us in a few moments. So we're going to kind of walk through just a few things about the Astanza products, not to get too involved in this, but we do have some different tattoo removal products. The Duality, which is a 2-wavelength system that does, you know, the majority of the colors, and this is what most nonprofits would be successful with. We also have the Eternity, which is a ruby laser, which does kind of stubborn blues, greens, that type of thing, and additional colors. And when you combine the two, that's our 3-wavelength system, the Trinity. So each of the different nonprofits can tell you a little bit more about what they're using and what works for them. So this is the meat of it. Why are we here? Why is laser tattoo removal, you know, being used in the nonprofit and corrections system? So important thing here, you know, tattoos can be removed nowadays. It's not something like we used to talk about where you got a tattoo and you had it for life. They can be removed. As we know, there are unwanted tattoos, gang tattoos, ones related to human trafficking that, you know, it's not that they're ugly per se, it's that they actually create some type of undue stress or other negative emotions. So it's not that, you know, you decided you don't want this tattoo anymore because you just don't want it. It's something that's possibly affecting your safety or impacting you emotionally. So that's one of the reasons why nonprofits are getting into it. Also, gang-related tattoos can create various safety issues. You know, if you're not in your gang anymore and you happen to be walking across town and you go into the wrong neighborhood with that gang tattoo, that might not be perceived very well, and that might cause some issues. So if you're trying to get out of a gang and you want those tattoos removed, nonprofits can help with that. And then tattoos that are on the face, hands, and or neck make it just tough to get a job. If you have your face totally tattooed, or maybe some obscenities written on your hand that you got in, you know, when you're incarcerated, that's probably not going to be something that most employers would want to hire someone with. I think a lot of people have gotten a little more enlightened and are hiring formerly incarcerated individuals that have some tattoos, and they're being a little more lenient on hiring. The whole Ban the Box initiative, which I think is a very good thing. Not asking about prior felonies and not totally excluding people because of that. So tattoo removal programs that kind of encounter these type of tattoos are helping people create a new future. And that's why we're here. So in some of these programs, laser tattoo removal is used as an incentive for completion of like a specific goal within a program. So if you're currently in a program and you're incarcerated and you just got your GED, you can then become eligible for the tattoo removal program, which kind of helps you move towards your reentry and release. So that way, you know, you've got that GED that you need. You've now got your tattoos removed that were possibly prohibiting you from getting a job, and it sets you up for success, which is what our correction system should be doing. And then, you know, laser tattoo removal can definitely be used based on prioritization. So we've always encouraged our nonprofits to not be removing tattoos that are, you know, for one, that you can't see, because that's not affecting someone's possible job opportunities. And also, we don't want to necessarily remove tattoos just because they're ugly. We want to remove the tattoos and prioritize the ones that are preventing people from getting a job, and based on the release date. It doesn't take like 3 treatments to get rid of most tattoos. It takes multiple treatments over a period of time, spaced out every 6 weeks. So we can schedule that based on when you're going to need to have the tattoos removed. And then, you know, just as I was saying here, it is a long process, and it's not always completed before you're released and re-enter society. So there are tattoo removal nonprofits, like what Joe Martin's doing and what Loretta Kent are doing at Southwest Tattoo Removal, that actually help as someone is released and is, you know, out in normal everyday life with low cost and nonprofit tattoo removal. So it kind of helps finish the process that was started. So it's very important that, you know, the process continues as people are released so that they can finish that tattoo removal process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes with Loretta Kent and how that works. Also, TJJD has a program like that too. So let's hear from the panelists. So what is the story about how each program got started? And Loretta, if you could start with you, I've got you up here on the screen with Southwest Tattoo Removal. Tell us a little bit about your organization and how you got things started.
Thank you, Brian. We're in San Antonio, Texas, and I began working with a plastic surgeon about 25 years ago for the removal of gang tattoos, simply to improve our San Antonio area and try to help people get themselves out of gangs and out of trouble. And back then we used a non-laser system, which, by the way, he's still doing that system. But I became very unhappy with that system because it tends to cause scars. And that's the delight of the laser is we have the ability to remove a scar remove a tattoo without a scar, and without the healing problems that we had with the old system. It actually works very well. The laser works very well to remove tattoos, and the care of it is much like having a tattoo placed on in the first place. It's not difficult to care for it afterward. And I have not had anybody with any trouble. So this has been a good way for us to go. But that was a long time ago when I got interested. I've only had the laser now for a year, and I'm very pleased with it.
That's great, Loretta. Thank you for that overview of how you got started. Appreciate that. And so Southwest Tattoo Removal Program is located in San Antonio. Now we also have from Kentucky, we have Joe Martin. Joe, you want to tell us a little bit about Tattoo Removal Inc.?
Hi, Brian. Can you hear me?
I can. You sound great. All the way from Kentucky.
You know, when I worked for AT&T, I always had to dial into a number and watch a webinar. So this is a little bit new to me, I guess. I'm stuck in the past. So hi, my name's Joe Martin, and I'm the founder and director of Tattoo Removal Inc. And kind of like Loretta, we are trying to help people with not going back into jail with recidivism, and by removing tattoos on their face, hands, and necks. And I like what you said, Brian, about prioritizing, because we will occasionally do tattoos that are invisible, meaning not on their hands, neck, and face. If they're really a bad gang tattoo, like something white supremacist, or like we're taking a couple off the back of a kid's legs, and it says, it says white supremacist. And so it helps them, like you said, self-esteem. And we also do removal for the commercial market or retail, just to sustain us. I have been writing grants, but what I'm finding out is that people are not very generous when you're talking about incarcerated people. I think the attitude is they did what they did, they get what they get, or whatever. I'm putting words in their mouth, but I have written lots of grants, and it seems like if it's puppies, kittens, rescuing children, food, feeding kids, it's all great, but incarcerated, not so much. And so we kind of embrace them, and I love our team. I have 2 doctors and 3 nurses on, and we're all volunteers in doing this. And as Brian has up on the screen, we also do education. So I was a little bit late because I tutor at the jail on Tuesday. And so if they start their GED and maybe get a couple sections done in the jail, they come to our office and they can do the other 2 sections. And we'll even pay for their test if they can't pay for it. And if they have tattoos, it goes all along what Brian just said about, getting them ready for reentry. Of course, we don't have one in the jail. I'm interested in hearing the next 2 ladies talk, because we worked very hard with the Kenton County Detention Center trying to get a laser into that jail, and the liability issues we just couldn't overcome them. I had our insurance company write 7 different endorsements on our insurance to include the county jail, but each time the jail put up another barrier, and we just couldn't overcome it. So I wish we had one in the jail, because they would just line up for it while they're incarcerated, and some of them are in there for 12 to 18 months. And, we could have their tattoos completely removed when they come out, and then they'd have their GED. And, I've presented this several times to the county, and not just one county, but 2 counties, 2 different counties. And I hope they'll come back around and they'll work with us a little bit more in earnest, because I think they were just putting up roadblocks to keep us out. But I don't know, that's my own perception of it. But I hope that we are helping, and I know we're changing lives, because I have seen some really hideous tattoos that on people's faces that I can't even believe they can leave their house. I mean, I've had a social worker sent me a young man, and she actually tried to sue the tattoo artist because it was so offensive what was put on this kid's head. But it's all a wonderful thing that we get to do. And like Brian's got up on the screen, we don't believe there's us and them. We're just us. you know, just all of us together as people, human race. And so I'm interested in hear what the next two ladies have to say. Thanks, Brian.
Hey, no problem, Jeff. Thank you for being on and what you do. As I said, Joe was doing some prison ministry this morning. So, you know, she's kind of out there on the front lines and kind of right where I think some of the participants on the phone want to be. So thank you for that behind the scenes kind of experience. So yeah, like we were just talking about, you know, being inside a corrections institute is a little different than being on the outside and running a nonprofit. So we've got a few ladies from the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, Harriet and Amber, here to tell us about that program and how it got started.
Hi, this is Amber. I started working for TJJD about 3 years ago, which is when we started our tattoo removal program. We also had a machine that was used years ago, kind of what was referenced earlier in the discussion, that would actually leave scars on youth. We did have some that ended up getting infections from that and had to go through wound care. So it was decided upon that was not the best way to remove a tattoo. A former administrator with TJJD identified the need to have a process for our youth to get tattoos removed, particularly those that are affiliated with gangs. So we did apply for some funds through the Second Chance Act, Juvenile Demonstration Project Act. That was in 2014, and we ended up purchasing our first duality with a stanza, and we've recently purchased our second machine, duality with a stanza, and we've been pretty pleased with it ever since. And our program continues to expand, and hopefully that'll be for years and years to come. But we also see a huge impact on the lives of the youth when they come to us, because our program is voluntary. They come to us and ask to be part of the program and have their gang tattoos, offensive tattoos removed. And the sheer excitement for them and what we see is just, it's amazing. And so it's definitely making a huge impact for these youth that are trying to re-enter. You know, they've learned from their past and they would like to leave it in the past.
You know, you bring up a really good point, Amber, that it is not mandatory, it is voluntary. And I think Joe said this earlier, that if they offered it in the prison system where she is, the line would be out the door for people wanting tattoos removed. So when we think about corrections departments and tattoo removal, it's not, you know, something that we're coercing people to do. It's things that they want to do because they've gotten to the point where they want to better their lives and they know that that's a step. So, you know, thanks for pointing that out there. So some essential ingredients for a successful nonprofit clinic or correction system, you have to have a place to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but you have to have a place. You can't do it just anywhere. And mobile places can work, but you have to have the right type of laser, and it's a little bit more logistics involved. You have to have practitioners, and that's going to depend on the regulations in your state, so we can talk about that in a few minutes. You have to have a reliable laser, which makes sense. You have to have funding, and funding's one thing we'll talk about in a little bit of detail here. So location and clinic space, essential ingredient number one. So let's ask everyone who's on the call here. So, you know, what type of setup does each of your clinics have? You know, what's the size? What's the number of treatment rooms, square footage, etc.? Joe, you want to start with telling us about what you have going on at Tattoo Removal Inc.?
Sure. We rented a small building. It has a large waiting room, and then we have an education room, and we have one treatment room, and then a little consulting office. We pay rent each month, so Originally, I wanted to work with some reentry programs that have the drug programs, and I met with them several times, and it just never worked out. And then last year, I got Woman of the Year, and one of the places that I called, they wanted to give me space finally, but I had already rented. So, but we do partner with this place called Life Learning Center, so it was a good thing just to connect with them. But so we just pay rent, and we didn't have any pushback from the city we're in now. The original city I was trying to get in, we got a lot of pushback. They said, and these are not my words, these are their words. They said they didn't want those people in their city. I'm thinking, wow. So they wouldn't give us a permit to build. You know, we had to do a build out in the building to make it work for the laser. So we just moved on. They said it would take 1.5 years to get the permit, and you know, we just dropped that very quickly and came to a different site. But it was more central to where I thought the people that needed the service would be. But, you know, God has a way of just working it out, and we have a location that's very nice, and it's in a good part of town, and so it's working. But Brian, you're right, you can't just set up anywhere. It took a lot of work to get it done, you know, with the 501c3, and it's a big project. I'm glad I didn't know how hard it was when I started. I probably wouldn't have done it.
Well, you bring up a really good point, Joe. That if you can find, we talk about this when we talk about setting up a business, any type of business, if you can find a location that someone is offering you to share with them, or some type of business or an existing nonprofit that has space that can, you know, do this and offset some of those overhead costs, you know, that's the easiest way to get something started. So if there is a community center, or if there is, you know, a government building, or some type of community court even, if you can be part of that, and, you know, regulations and so forth will dictate that. But if you can get involved with someone else, it could, you know, make it a little easier for you getting going. So why don't we hear from TJJD? This is their actual treatment space here at one of their locations. So tell us a little bit about what you have here, and what was required for you to get started.
As you can see on the screen, it is a very small space. We just don't need, you know, a huge clinic or anything of that sort. I am the only one that does the actual treatments there at the Giddings location. You know, basically we had to apply for the proper licenses to have, and then, you know, we just needed our medical chair. We needed our filing cabinet, a small little storage center to put our safe on for our cleaning supplies, the machine itself, and then I have a little desk in the corner that you can't see, where I will sit and fill out my my papers and stuff. And we do have a consultation office where when our clients do come in, it is you know, for privacy reasons that we have it closed doored and off to where no one can really hear the discussion that's going on. But other than that, it's a pretty simple setup, and it does the job.
Great. Yeah, like it says on the screen, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Typically, you only have to have a single room to perform treatments. And the ideal space, you know, about 400 to 600 square feet, including reception, treatment room, and a small office. Loretta, how do these two setups equate to what you have going on?
Well, mine's very similar. I am located in a medical office building where I previously had a clinic. I'm also an esthetician, and I decided to close that clinic, and the owner of the building has graciously given me space to continue to use, and I give her a donation receipt as we are a 501c3. So we're totally blessed, and that includes the utilities. The space is very comfortable. We have a good-sized waiting room, a good-sized treatment room, and office type area, and including a large area in the back. We have 2 restrooms, and it works very nicely.
That's great. So, you know, as you can hear, treatment rooms are about similar in size, and nothing too fancy. And I love the idea that you actually give a receipt to your landlord so they can get a write-off. So I've never heard of people doing that, so that's a great idea. Love that. So here's kind of a sticky area for a lot of different nonprofits and corrections institutes. Who actually does the treatments? Because this is going to be based on regulations and different things within your state. So let's hear from, how about Joe Martin in Kentucky first, on who actually does your treatments, and, do you see a foreseeable change in that?
Sorry about my phone. So in Kentucky, it can be a trained laser specialist. Once you take the training with Estanza, then you are qualified. Oops, sorry.
Someone calling about tattoo removal, I bet.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let me turn my phone off. Sorry about that. So in Kentucky, but you have to have a doctor within 100 miles of the clinic, of the building. So we have 2 doctors, because our one doc is a retired pediatrician, and she and her husband, who is also a retired doctor, they both go to Florida for 6 months. They're both golfers. So we had to get a second doctor that could be in the area. But the pediatrician, she doesn't do the laser, although we did train her. She wasn't comfortable with it. But the other one, he's a retired internist. He's very active. He volunteers in our office, but he also volunteers at a Cincinnati medical clinic where he still does internist work, his using his doctor degree. So we have a surgical nurse. She's also a laser specialist. And then I do a lot of the treatments. I do most of the treatments. Our doc only comes in on Saturday. We usually have a pretty full book on Saturday. And so that's kind of how we work it. And then we have another nurse, and she just helps out. She doesn't use the laser. And I have Loretta mentioned esthetist. We have one esthetist. She works in a med spa, and she does the laser as well. And she loves it. She says she gets tired of being in the med spa doing facials for rich women. I started saying the wrong word. Anyway, so she really likes coming in the office and helping our clientele, because they're so grateful and they're so sweet. And I don't want to say needy, but we fill a need that they do really appreciate and want, and it's a lot of fun. So we have her. So really, we don't have to have a license like in Ohio, which is right across the bridge. It can only be done by doctors. So over in Kentucky, it's a little more relaxed, the regulations.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And yeah, that'll dictate for a lot of people on the call, where you can open and what type of practitioner you need. So Loretta, what are the laws in Texas? And I guess this will apply to TJJD a little bit, but who does the treatments at your clinic, Loretta?
I do the treatments. Ours in Texas, it aligns pretty much with Kentucky. The physician needs to be within 75 miles and does not have to be present in the office. I was trained and received certification from another company, and then also was trained with Estanza when I received the laser. So I'm very comfortable with using it. Have not had any troubles, and my comfort relays to my clients. They are comfortable because I don't appear nervous, and I can talk them through it, and it works very nicely. But the regulations in Texas are much like Kentucky.
Okay. And at TJJD, are there any special things that you need to do? And I know at Homeboy, they have volunteer practitioners that are physicians and doctors and RNs come in. Is that something that TJJD could do, or are you kind of tied to what you can do within the facility based on legislation and regulations?
Yeah, we are definitely tied with that just based off of our own policy. Basically, I'm the only one that does the treatments. We are getting started at our Gainesville facility where we're going to have, we have 2 other people that are trained at this point, but they're still working on their comfort level, working the machine. And so I've worked under the TJJD medical director for the last 3 years. And as far as volunteers and stuff, we're not really considering that at this point, because what we do is if our youth are not, have not completed treatment while they're in one of our facilities, we actually network together with other places in the free world that can offer services, sometimes free and sometimes at a reduced rate for our youth so they can continue treatments. But like I said, I've been the only one, and we have slowly started to change that to where I have a few backup people because our program is so large, and currently we're treating at 11 facilities. So we definitely have to have more than one person doing treatments.
Wow, that's great. As it expands, it's definitely something to think about of having, volunteers. I know at Homeboy, they have like over 40 practitioners, and we did training for 25 of them recently. So if you can have that happen in your program where you're not the only one on the line for doing the treatments, that can really help free you up to do other things like raise more money or things like that. So yeah, it doesn't have to be all on yourself, but sometimes it ends up being that way. So in terms of regulations and where it varies by state, we do have a map that you can go to, or if you just search laser tattoo regulations, you'll see a map and it'll kind of have information about each state, or we can help you, with figuring that out in your state. For most states, they're going to require that a physician is involved in some way, whether it's a medical director that's on site or off site, or just someone that's responsible from a medical perspective for those treatments. Because you definitely want someone who you can call if something, does go unexpected. Although, for the most part, tattoo removal is not an ablative procedure. It doesn't break the skin, so it's relatively low risk as long as aftercare is able to be followed. All right, so this next part here, having a reliable laser. So one of the things that is very frustrating for practitioners and for the clients is to have a broken laser. You can't do your treatments. Also, if you're looking to buy a laser and buy one that's either too inexpensive and breaks all the time, or that's so expensive, you can't actually make payments and keep up with the maintenance on it. Which service is an important part of your laser purchase. So making sure that you have the preventative maintenance scheduled and you have some program. You wouldn't want to buy a car and never change the oil. It just doesn't work very well. And these lasers that we're talking about, a lot of them are Q switched, and you do have to do some maintenance and have alignment and just have them fixed occasionally. So that's just something to think about as you're purchasing a laser. And you don't want to buy one online, because just like buying a car online, you don't know what the pedigree is, you don't know where it's been, you don't know a whole lot about it. So you want to make sure if you do buy a laser through eBay or some online service that you actually know the maintenance records, serial numbers, see it boot up, see it actually work, and have a warranty. You don't want to buy a laser and get a service plan that you don't know who's actually going to service the laser. And buying it from eBay or China, you just don't know what you're going to get. Some of the devices are not FDA approved, which is going to create some problems if you're trying to get a grant or trying to get past some state regulations, because it's illegal. And there's possible criminal and civil liability. And since they're not really FDA approved, there is a chance that there could be some injury to your patients, and they just are not as high quality devices. So, it makes a lot of sense that when you're buying that laser, that you do your research, talk to some different companies, go through a solid evaluation process. before you choose, who you're going to go with. So I wanted to ask each of the panelists kind of what the process was that you went through, and kind of, what was your criteria for a laser? What type of, regulations or what type of things did you have to go through, in the case of TJJD. So why don't we hear from Joe Martin first. Joe, you want to tell us about how you decided on using the laser that you have and what type you have, and tell us a little bit about that purchase decision.
Okay. So when I was deciding to do this ministry, I went to hear Father Greg Boyle speak. And he emailed me. I told him I tutored at the jail, and I kind of liked the idea of taking tattoos off. And he gave me his card, and he said, email me. So I did the next morning, and he said 3 words. He said, come to California. And so I thought he didn't understand. So I emailed him back, and I said, Father, I live in Kentucky. And he sent back 3 words, come to California. So I did. I flew to California, and I took the Homeboy Industry tour, and of course the tattoo removal, and it was an Estanza laser. So then I came back, and as I said, I wrote the IRS paperwork, the 1023 form, and got my nonprofit status. So before I decided on Estanza, I contacted our salesperson who, I said, I would like the names of several people in my area or close to me that I can contact and with this laser. So I also visited a doctor in Louisville. I went down there twice, and he had the Estanza duality, and he really liked it, so I was good with that. And then there's another doctor in Louisville. I didn't visit him, but I spoke to his technician on the phone. And then there was a third one in, I forget, I think it was Chicago. I spoke to him on the phone. So, everybody was pleased with the duality. So I felt safe in spending that huge amount of money on the duality. And a lot of it was Homeboy Industries. So that was kind of my process.
Okay, great. Yeah, and if you aren't familiar with Father Greg and the work he does out of Homeboy, I definitely recommend purchasing the book Barking to the Choir. That's a good one, or Tattoos on the Heart, and learn a little bit more about how their mission has been almost grounded in tattoo removal. It's amazing what they do out there, and go out there and check it out. They've got a lot of good tours and so forth, and the Homeboy Gathering in October. August, yeah, sorry. I was just out there, August of each year. So Loretta, tell us a little bit about how Southwest Tattoo Removal purchased your laser, and kind of what process you went through with obtaining that.
Okay. Well, when I decided to look for lasers and see what my options were, I went on a web search to begin with, and then I saw that Estanza was located in Dallas, and I liked what you say on your web pages about the lasers. I also saw that you were involved with Homeboy Industries and et cetera, and had other nonprofits listed on your website. And I started a discussion with Opal, and before long I had the opportunity to purchase or to have one for a year and through the company, and then and that was unusual. You all didn't do that before, and you helped me with that. And now I've refinanced it and structured it on my own, and I'm very pleased with the duality. It's a workhorse. It's done the job without a blip, and I'm very pleased with the purchase.
That's great. And I think TJJD, you have a duality as well. Can you tell us a little bit about, as far as a government agency, what you had to do to actually get the funding and go through an evaluation process?
Okay, so with our process, the very first machine we had, we knew we weren't going to touch that again because, like I said, it left pretty bad scars on the youth. And so there was a lot of online research done comparing different companies, different machines, what was thought to fit our needs at that time, which is also the reason why purchasing our second machine, we stayed with the same company, of course, was a Stanza. The second time, I was not present for the first go round of interviews with the companies, but I was for the second. So basically, our process is we have to reach out to several companies. We have to allow for fair bidding, which means we have to at least present 3 or so to central office, and they kind of do their own research on top of that. And then you go through all the financial part, which I think Miss Brody's going to touch on in just a little bit. But basically, I met with several companies. We had face-to-face, essentially it was an interview. I got to ask them all kind of questions just based on what we had experienced from using our duality. And hands down, it wasn't shortly after that I knew I was going to suggest buying a second duality. Of course, the final decision is made in central office, but I had a lot to back up when I say it really does the job. So apparently it was convincing enough, and we were able and blessed to get that second machine to continue to help other youth that are coming into TJJD.
That's great. Thanks for telling us about that. It's great hearing all the different ways people came to the decision and what went into that evaluation process, because I know it's different for each and every one. And definitely, of course, I think Astanza is the best company to buy from, but take a look at some other companies, talk to some people in the industry and other nonprofits, and make the decision that you feel comfortable with and that's best for what you're trying to accomplish with your nonprofit. But definitely make sure you have a reliable laser, because that's kind of the essence of these programs. So the last part of this, before we get to the bonus part, is about funding. So I know that everyone has had some different ways of purchasing their laser. So there are different sources of funds available. Grants are part of it for nonprofits. And then, of course, monetary donations and fundraising, the GoFundMe, that type of thing, or just asking for money. In-kind donations, if someone's going to donate a product or a space or something like that. I know Joe Martin, you can tell us in a moment about the Zimmer chiller that was donated to you. So why don't we start with that? So Joe, how did you get funded, and tell us a little bit about how the Zimmer cryo came about, and tell us about your funding story.
Okay, well, I would recommend my funding for my laser because my husband passed away 10 years ago, and he left a large insurance policy. So I, retired from my job after 30 years, and I never did touch that money. So I decided to spend that money on a laser, some of it. So I spent my husband's insurance money just to buy the laser. The second, and actually we had a chiller that Astanza gave us. It was an older model. It didn't last. It was just, they kind of just threw it in for me. And so I was doing diagnostics with Zimmer, and it was going to be $2,400 to fix it for, I forget, a compressor. I forget what the piece was, or $6,900 for a new cryo. And I was like, let me get back with you on that, because we didn't have that kind of money in our budget. So I was kind of wanted to cry, because I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, no, I just started praying, actually. And I just said, if it's to be, I guess I'll just work it out. And within 1 hour, Jeff from Cryo called me. He introduced himself, and he said, I got on your website. I like what you do, and I'm going to send you the cryo. I'm like, and then I start crying. So I did get a cryo for free. It was just super great. And I was just shocked. And I'm going to go on a little bit longer, Brian.
Sure.
So when I was doing the jail project, we were in kind of negotiations for a laser for the jail. And I happened to meet Nick in Dallas, who owns Eraser Clinics. And he had switched products, and he offered to sell me one, not a duality, but the Trinity, the Eternity, and I was going to try to purchase it from him because it was only 2 years old. And I was talking to him, and I was telling him about Jeff. I said, "Do you know Jeff from Zimmer?" And of course, everybody knows him. And he said, yes. So I told him he donated the cryo. And he said, that's a good idea. He said, I'm going to donate that laser to you. So he donated a $60,000 laser to me.
That's great.
It was such a blessing. And Estanza couldn't have been any sweeter about decommissioning it in Texas, and then coming up to Kentucky and setting it up and doing all the stuff. Josh, I just love Josh. He just helped us so much. And and the shipping, they didn't even charge me for the shipping. It was just all wonderful. And we were so blessed by all of that. So I know you don't want to hear that much information, but that was the good news.
No, that's great to hear. We just did a client survey, and probably the number one comment was, "We love Josh. Josh is the best. Bring Josh back. Can Josh come out and see us again?" We're like, "No, we only really need to work on your laser every, certain number of months. He can't be out there every month working on your laser."
Well, I never thought anybody would beat Armando, but Josh is a close second. He's a close first.
Yeah, we love Armando too. All of our service guys are great. And that's one thing that we love to talk about here is that, we try to treat clients like family. So I think we tend to maybe get a little close relationships going. So everyone's like excited that their laser's getting worked on and things that are going on. So that's great. So let's hear a little bit from TJJD about your funding. You mentioned it a little bit earlier that you did have a second chance grant. Was that something you were looking for, or where's a place that you can go and look for grants actively?
Well, this is Harriet.
And Harriet is the grant expert. We will say she's the grant fairy here.
Oh, I don't know if I'm such a great expert. I actually was in the nonprofit world for 18 years and worked for an agency that was small that, I was beating people over the head for money. So I have a tendency to be able to be very persistent. But you have to understand that grants come from all different kinds of locations. And there are, government grants, which are always very, very restrictive. And so we look for those just merely because we are a government agency. But when I started looking, I've been trying to find a way of getting a third laser for us. And I started thinking about the Society for the Plastic Surgeons. And I've been looking for all different kinds of ways of getting that done. But grants can come from many places, from private foundations, if they believe in your cause. For instance, I haven't found anybody that's really, wanting to give me money for a laser just yet. But I haven't given up either, Brian. So that's the other thing about this. One of the things that I think I would like to encourage my friend from Kentucky is that the justice system, the perception is beginning to change in terms of not looking at those people being those people anymore. And I know for a fact that it's changed as far as juvenile justice, because we're looking at this probably for the right way for the first time. And these kids have been subject to abuse. They've been just all kinds of atrocities before they even get into our system. Mm-hmm. So we're actually looking at it from a more therapeutic standpoint. And that's why I talk to people. I talk to people about helping kids, because that's what they still are. They're still kids. And second chances are the best way also to be able to talk about it from an adult standpoint. You know, you're giving these people an opportunity to change their lives. If they remain the same as they were before they came in, then how do you expect something different when they come out? So I don't know if that was a clear cut answer for you, but the answer is you just have to keep looking.
I think that's a good answer. You know, I went out and took a look at some of the funding and grant sites that are available publicly, because I think a lot of it is, you know, you've been in nonprofits for, you know, a long time. I think for a lot of us just getting into it, it's kind of keeping your ear to the ground and knowing where some of these grants come from, and just kind of getting into the queue of knowing about them. So a few places that we found that have been successful for finding grant money: Grant Watch, grants.gov, and a lot of these are consolidators, so they actually aren't really, they're not the source of the grant, but they're just consolidating all these different links and programs so you can find them easily. So these are a couple different sources that you can take a look at for finding a grant. And so we talked a little bit about this already, so I don't think we need to go back through this, because we did talk about the grants that did fund the programs, the Second Chance grant and so forth. So we're going to get to the bonus part, the part that I'm excited about because I'm a marketing guy. And I'm a firm believer that if no one knows what you're doing and the good work you're doing, then it doesn't really matter to some degree, because you need to get out there and you need to tell everyone what you're doing and shout it from the top of the roof. So some keys to the marketing of nonprofit laser tattoo removal. So your strategy is going to differ from traditional businesses. And, you know, we know that with nonprofits that money is definitely something, and your donations that come in are very, very scarce. For most of us, unless you're the Gates Foundation or something like that. But you definitely want to be thinking about more low-cost means of promotions, social media, and relying on PR. Now, I know Joe mentioned this earlier. She was actually voted, I think what was the city Woman of the Year, Joe?
Yeah, Greater Cincinnati. Yeah.
Greater Cincinnati. So, you know, we had that pop up in our news feed, and we saw that, you know, she won Cincinnati Woman of the Year. So I think things like that are the things that are going to help you get funding and additional proceeds to either open up a new facility or purchase another laser or get a, you know, Ruby laser, something like that. And I think it was mentioned on the practice call that a lot of times people don't want to fund non-proven nonprofits. I think, Loretta, you might have mentioned that. So a lot of your focus was just getting the door open, continuing and starting to prove your mission and carry out your mission. So if you can, you know, open the doors, get the laser, start getting good results and showing the community that you're really doing good work like everyone here is, you know, you can start to get some of that PR and to get some of those funding dollars. So you definitely want to tell your stories. And that's something that I want to ask everyone about, because we haven't really talked about stories yet. And I know that each of you have your different stories. So if you could tell me one story about someone that you've worked with that you think is, you know, a story that everyone on the phone should hear to maybe help motivate and encourage them to maybe do this in their own community. How about Loretta? Can you tell us about someone that Southwest Tattoo Removal has kind of helped and, you know, encouraged along the way?
Well, actually, there's quite a number of individuals. I have had grown men come into my office and cry because they see that their life can change. Just the ability to get something done that they're not able to afford on the outside at regular retail rates. And it really makes a difference. People are very, very thankful to have this done. But I've found there's one young man in particular that came up through the School of Hard Knocks, grew up in South Austin, and very dysfunctional beginning to life, and ended up in prison and has and he decided while he was in prison that something had to change. He didn't want it to come out and be what he was before. And so it started a long road of education for him. And then part of that was getting the tattoos off that are on his face, which will hold him back. He's currently in college. He's married a woman that is a nurse, and they are, their goal is to go out and start their own mission in the future with working with young people. So I'm helping this gentleman along that path. I've helped several people to get into the military. They wanted to serve our country, but were unable to because of the tattoos that are on their neck or their hands. And by getting those off, it has made a world of difference in their lives. To have an individual that can support his own family, it makes all the difference in the world. In that family, the whole family is improved. So it's pleasing to me. This is what I'm here in the business to do, is change lives.
Wow, that's a great story. And I think, you know, what you said about being able to support their own family and the pride that brings someone, you know, to have simple things like, we think simple things like tattoos removed can actually help with that, which it can help someone, you know, give them, you know, their first stable job or, you know, a job coming out of prison. So it's a huge deal what everyone's doing here. So Joe, tell us a little bit about someone that you've worked with that, you know, you think is a good testament to how tattoo removal can change someone's life, or someone that you think would encourage other people to get into nonprofit tattoo removal.
Okay, we had a man come in, and as Loretta said, he had a fatherless life. He was raised by CPS. He did have a mother that was not able to be present because of drug addiction. So he had been recruited by the Ku Klux Klan at a very young age. He moved up through the ranks. He became the Grand Wizard of the Klan. And he did 16 years in prison for something he did while he was in the Klan. So when he got out of prison, he asked us to remove his KKK, you know, that he had the hoods and a burning cross and a lot of, you know, that kind of tattooing. And so we had been working with him for probably a year, over a year. And so one Saturday morning, our first client was a young Black man. And this man that was in the Klan, he called and said, you know, I'm in the neighborhood. My boss has something to do. Do you mind if I come in and get my treatment a day early or something like that, a couple days early? I said, well, we'll fit you in. You have to wait in the office. And so when we finished treating this Black young man, he came out of the treatment room, and the white supremacist guy stood up and he shook the Black, no, he said, hey man, how are you? And they started to have a conversation while I was scheduling the next appointment for the Black man. And it was so inspiring because they had this conversation. They shook hands when the Black man left, and it gave me chills to think how the transformation of this white supremacist he's come so far, and then removing like those things from the past that were a reminder of all of that, you know, so it created a whole new vision of himself. And it was just a really, I wished I would have had a picture of that. You know, I wish I would have got my phone out and took a picture. It was so neat.
Wow. Yeah, that's a picture in your mind that you'll probably never forget. It's amazing. So, Harriet and Amber, you work with youth, and you probably reach a lot of people before they've, you know, matured into adulthood. Can you tell us a few stories, or a story that's impacted both of you, you know, greatly, that others might want to hear about?
So, like the other ladies, we have similar where our youth are able to go back into the free world and secure employment. One in particular didn't go home to a lot of family, but he too grew up on the streets. That was his family. He now is in college and has his own apartment and has his own little family. He's actually come back to our facility during graduation ceremonies, and he has spoken to our youth, basically encouraging them to get right, and not to follow the same path that led them to where they are. And but I want to go off a little bit on that and speak about a whole nother group that we have recently seen a pretty big increase in when it comes to treating their tattoos, and that is our sex trafficked youth. And you hear really bad stories about things that our youth have done to others, but there's a lot of times that we don't stop and listen to what bad has been done to them. And I'm very, very passionate about treating those youth that have been sex trafficked. They are tagged in ways that would blow your mind. It used to be you would have, some people would have the lips put on them. Some people would have actual barcodes put on them. We've recently treated some that their own family member was their sex trafficker and put their name on them. And when you have a juvenile, I mean, it's hard enough being a kid, but then you're a kid that's been sex trafficked. And so that's something that person's going to struggle with, those internal scars for the rest of their life. But when they look down and they see that name, or they see, the whatever stamp that their trafficker put on them, that's a trigger. And for us, being able to remove that trigger for them is life-changing. And so when we have both females and males, because it goes both ways, when they come in, especially this last group that I treated a few weeks back, you have a lot of tears that are shed inside of that clinic. And it's almost like you're giving them their power back. And so you do start to see a change, and they're so very thankful. So anytime you have a youth that says thank you for what you're doing, you can't put any kind of amount of money on that. To me at that point, the machine paid for itself. And so, I get to see it daily, the changes in youth, just their excitement when they see that it's lightened up or that it's gone. So we definitely have a lot of success stories.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I think sometimes taking those before and afters just makes so much difference, because sometimes you don't think that it's lightened up that much, or you can't remember what it looked like when you had that tattoo. So yeah, being able to see the before and after, and just sensing that change in someone as far as, that their insides has changed also as much as their outside. That's amazing. So we're kind of getting to the end here. We do have a question and answer section coming up. If you do want to learn more about tattoo removal, you can come to see us in Dallas. We've got a couple courses coming up, November 2nd and 3rd. We also have like an advanced class on the 4th for people wanting to get more business advice and consultations. We're going to send everyone a free copy of our laser buying guide that's on the call, so expect that. And of course, we've got some great nonprofits that can benefit from receiving any funding that you can help with. So if you want to donate to Tattoo Removal Inc., you can go to their website and their donate now, or Southwest Tattoo Removal, also a 501c3. You can make a tax deductible donation by sending that to Southwest Tattoo Removal, 1730 Southwest Military Drive, Suite 230, San Antonio, Texas. And that brings us to questions. So I know we had a question earlier about regulations in Southwest Africa. I don't happen to know that off the top of my head, believe it or not. But we are going to get back with Denzel about that question. I haven't seen, let's see, I think I might have one more question here. So it looks like we have another question, and that is actually, I think, something that Amber was talking about. The question is, what's the return on the investment in laser tattoo removal? Well, I think Amber kind of summed it up pretty well, that it's really that change in a person's life that you can't really put a price on. You can't say, well, this person being able to get a job is equal to, $500. These are lives we're talking about. So, I think Homeboy Industries, has a great example where they actually talk about their recidivism rate for members in their program has actually decreased from like 65%, which is the national rate, to 35% for people that have gone through their program. So it's really hard to quantify that. So, I think like Amber said, it's hard to put a price on what tattoo removal benefits someone. But at the end of the day, these are lives we're talking about. So if you can help tell that story, and I think video is a great way to tell some of those stories, if you can make sure it's protecting that person and they're willing to tell their testimony, that it can help with creating some funding sources. So
Brian,
yeah.
I noticed that you did not put TJJD down as a donation location.
I did not get back the information on where someone would send a check. How would they actually get you a donation, Amber?
Well, the reason why I never included it, because it's on every email I send you.
It is?
Yes.
So I'm so obtuse, I have not seen that. Okay.
And believe it or not, most people don't even know that you can, when you make a donation to Texas Juvenile Justice Department, that it is tax deductible. That's one of the beauties of being a government agency, because we just are. You can actually deduct that from your taxes. So do you want me to give you that address?
Yes, tell me right now.
It's 11209 Metric Boulevard, Building H, Suite A, Austin, Texas.
All right. So if you want to make a donation to TJJD, their tattoo removal program, you can just send on a check. And we did get a question that came through. So the question is, have any of the companies had any safety concerns in helping sex trafficking victims? And I guess we can broaden that a little bit. Has anyone had any safety concerns involving gang tattoos or sex trafficking victims, or any type of safety concerns for your patients, either privacy or your safety while they're being treated? Has anyone had any issues with that or thoughts?
Brian, this is Loretta. I have not had any issues with it, but I think the goal or the idea is not to become complacent. Anything can happen, and you're dealing with people whose backgrounds are far different than mine was, and I need to be aware of who's in my office and what. It's nice that I get to have a conversation with these folks that, on a rather intimate level, you're dealing with them personally on a one-to-one basis, and you, over time, you know them, you see them several times, and they begin to tell you what their life is like. And I want to know, is that person out of your life? Is that person still giving you trouble? And I ask them, and they're quite free with the information with me. So I think it's important that we're just aware.
Yeah, that's a good point. Always be vigilant, I think, is what a lot of people would say about that.
Hi, Brian, this is Joe.
Yeah.
So I had one person come in, and she was high, and I told her, I said, I don't think you feel well. I said, I'm going to reschedule you. And I did. And I scheduled her out pretty far, like 8 weeks, because I wanted her to kind of think about, I think she knew I was not going to treat her because she was high. So you don't have to put up with bad behavior. So if there's somebody comes in that they're drinking or they're not acting right, then you can not treat them. I don't treat people that are high.
Okay. Yeah. And I think what one of the companies that we work with that does like free tattoo removal, even though they're a for-profit business. They said that they have people come in the early morning or late evening when they're not open to public traffic. So that way there's less of a chance that someone would see them coming in, because, you know, if you're in a gang and you're seen going into a tattoo removal clinic, that could be a security issue right there. So doing it kind of off hours in some cases might be a good safety thing too. So we have another question, and this will be the last one for today. And I think this is great for Joe and Loretta. So the question is does anyone on the call have a for-profit as well as non-profit? And how is it configured legally and physically? So I think both Loretta and Joe are 501c3s, but did you ever conceive of having a for-profit as well? Or how does that work with the way you charge for services and also give services away for free?
Well, for me in South Texas, I have laid out a plan as far as those who qualify for free or low-cost treatments. And then the others that come in and don't meet those qualifications are given a lower than retail price, and that is to support the program, helps to support the program. And I'm careful to always thank everyone for coming in and using our service, as it will further our mission. So that's been helpful, I believe, to make people feel good that they're actually helping others as well.
And hi, this is Joe. In the 401, in the 501c3, you are allowed to make money in your nonprofit. So like Loretta, we also do low-cost retail just to support the ministry. Nobody, like I said at the beginning, nobody takes a salary, but the rent is expensive. And of course, you know, we have the maintenance on the lasers. So all of those are expenses that you have to deal with, just the basics, water and heat. And so we do charge, and that's no problem with the 501c3 status. And as well with Loretta, we do tell people that are retail clients that they are helping people coming out of incarceration, and they like that. It's kind of like that Tom's shoes, where if you buy a pair of shoes, they donate a pair of shoes. It's kind of like that, and people like to be helpful and generous.
That's true.
I can see that. Well, all right. Well, we've been a little over an hour here. So I definitely want to say thank you to our panelists. I think this has been a great conversation, and their information is in the webinar. So if you want to contact any of them individually, that would be great. Opal and Bryce, which you've heard a little bit about today, they'll give you a call for those that were on the webinar as attendees to see if you have any questions. And here's my Bitmoji. So I'm going to sign out for everyone and say thank you for being on the call today and having as much of an interest in nonprofit tattoo removal as our panelists did. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, everyone.